For the director's report this morning, we do have a second item. Obviously, most folks are aware that a large recycling company closed a couple of weeks ago, closure of 284 bottle bill recycling centers, which has had a significant impact on the industry, those employees, and significantly, of course, the consumers of the state of California who have lost those redemption sites. So in order just to be responsive, we thought we'd have the Deputy Adam Tauber give a short update on that situation. So go ahead, Adam. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, I just want to say, in case you're wondering if we are aware that there's a crisis, yes, we are aware that there's a crisis. As Scott said, 284 recycling centers closed this month. As many of you have noted, since the peak in around 2013, we're down to roughly half of the number of recycling centers that we had. There are a number of reasons that this has happened. I'd say that the primary thing is the falling scrap prices for aluminum, which has traditionally been the real support for the program, is the high value of aluminum scrap. But there have been some other factors as well. The China's national sword policy has played a part in this with affecting the markets and the movement of materials. It's had only a kind of an indirect on the beverage container program scrap values, primarily because the quality of the material that comes from the beverage container, the buyback centers, is very high. That's the grade A stuff that reclaimers and recyclers really want to use. But historically, there's a long-term shift in the program away from aluminum and glass as the primary materials that beverages are packed in to plastics. And there's a variety of plastics, and it's complicated things and caused disruptions in the markets as well, in part reducing the amount of aluminum that's in the system at the same time as the scrap value for that valuable commodity has gone down. But also we've had lower recycling rates, and to the best that we can figure this out, the prime reason for lower recycling rates is a healthy economy. When the economy is healthy, consumption goes up and recycling behaviors go down. It's basic human nature. It's not to say that there's probably not an impact from the closure of the sites, but it's almost impossible to know. And I think one of the other important factors that most of you who are familiar with being down in the weeds on this has to do with the one-size-fits-all approach that CalRecycle is required to use for setting the processing payments and the handling fees. We have a very large, geographically diverse state. The low-volume recycling centers tend to have much, much higher cost per container than the high-volume sites, but by statute, we're required to average all of that out. And as well, the high-density areas of the state tend to have lower transportation costs than the low-density population areas of the state. And again, we're forced to average that all out. So the impact on the low volume and rural sites is more severe. What we've been seeing in terms of the impact from these closures in the short term, basically in the last 3 weeks, is there are some recycling centers who are overwhelmed by the volume that they're getting now, because they may have been surrounded by Replanet recycling centers, and now they're the only recycling center around. Their volume has gone up 2, 3, 4 times to what they're used to. And it's not a surprise to us that the volume would move from one place to another as consumers look for a place to return their material. But I'd say that we were a little bit surprised that some of these recycling centers would be so overwhelmed that they're running out of money. They're having traffic problems, local code enforcement problems, and things like that. Beyond that, some consumers clearly have a lot farther to travel to redeem their beverage containers. And even worse, we're aware that some of Replanet's debts will probably never be repaid. And that's going to have an impact on a lot of people. We've heard some rumors that some of their checks have bounced. And unfortunately, there's virtually nothing that CalRecycle can do about that. That's Replanet's problem, so to speak. There's also been some misinformation and some rumors going around. So I want to be unequivocal that CalRecycle is not going around shutting down recycling centers willy-nilly. We have no intention of closing down the program. And we are not targeting recycling centers that have had an increase in volume due to the shift of material from the closed Replanet sites to the remaining sites. We understand that that shift happens. So I'd like to mention a couple of things that CalRecycle is doing right now to try and help the situation. First and foremost, we have a $5 million supplement program that was approved by the legislature in this year's budget. The first payments from that will go out in September. And that's a $1,000 a month payment to the lowest volume recycling centers. So there's 416 recycling centers every month will get a check for $1,000. I hope that helps. Another thing we're doing is to ensure that we can refill those locations that Replanet has vacated as quickly as possible. We're expediting the application review process. Applications from existing recycling centers with a good history of compliance will be reviewed within 2 weeks. Applications for former Replanet locations or zones that had Replanet locations serving them will be moved to the front of the line. If necessary to fill demand, we're prepared to offer additional pre-certification training classes. And we're also exploring the possibility of accepting applications for certification electronically to further streamline the process. In terms of the grocer's role in this issue, we recently posted a listing online of all of the Option A dealers. That's to say, those beverage dealers who are located in unserved zones who have elected to redeem in store rather than paying a $100 a day fee. So that list is available online. Unfortunately, it's a 4,000 line PDF that's not terribly user-friendly, but we're working right now to turn that into a dynamic, searchable database. While we're not in a position to comment on the specific enforcement strategies, we are going to ensure that all Option A dealers are aware of their obligations and that they are holding up their end of the program. So the closure of the Replanet sites has created over 400 convenience zones that are being addressed according to our standard process. We had a presentation on that last month. The standard process for when a convenience zone recycler closes, and we're expediting that review wherever feasible. I've got to commend the convenience zone unit for really taking on this challenge of dealing with these 400 zones. Normally, we issue letters to the dealers in the affected zones within 30 days. We had 400 zones, and we issued those letters in 9 days. So we're really working hard, trying to get a handle on this. You know, we know that this is a hardship on the remaining recycling centers. You know, we're taking that impact into account when considering enforcement for those who find that they need to close their doors early because they've run out of cash, or the lines have become too long, or they're having street traffic problems, local code enforcement due to long lines and things like that. We're not going to be trying to, you know, ding them twice for being in a tight spot. So, and finally, you know, it's worth remembering that despite all of these challenges, we still have one of the best beverage container recycling programs in the world. We're literally recycling billions and billions of used beverage containers every year. I don't think that's going to stop. I think this is a great opportunity for all of us to come together and make some improvements to the program that are clearly needed. And that's about all I've got. Scott? Questions?
Yeah. Questions for Adam. Mark, I saw your hand pop up first, and then we'll go over to Ralph. No, we'll bring a microphone to you.
There you go.
All right, Mark Murray with Californians Against Waste. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Adam. I guess that's where I really want to start. I know it's been a really tough couple of weeks, and I want to thank you, Adam, and make sure that you're aware that your team at the Division of Recycling, I think, has been very responsive to me and very responsive to recyclers that I have sent in your direction who are interested in filling these sites. They've had data requests, they're trying to understand, and I really appreciate the responsiveness of your team on that. I also want to, I think, echo a couple of points that you've made and really invite the department to communicate that to the world, because I think that there is a misunderstanding about how we got into this crisis. You know, you mentioned aluminum. So the aluminum scrap price has dropped for the volume of aluminum. If it was the same volume of aluminum in 2014 as it was today, which it's not, it's less, but that's been a $70 million drop in value to the collection infrastructure. And we have no way of making that up with processing payments. Policymakers need to understand that. The scrap value drop for PET, relatively modest, $28 million. And we do have a mechanism for addressing that, but it's too slow. It's not responding in real time. I think policymakers need to understand that. Also been a slight drop in the aluminum, in the glass scrap value. Again, it's the program, the statutory requirements of the program are not allowing the department to respond in real time to these changes in scrap value. It seems to me that it would be helpful to everyone if that was clearly articulated, publicly articulated. I think the chairs of the policy committees understand that, but it's pretty clear to me that the public doesn't understand that, opinion leaders don't understand that, some in the press don't understand that, and I think it would be helpful to convey that. Similarly, Adam, you made the point about this statutory flaw, this, you know, who knew we wouldn't get it exactly right in 1986? But this notion of a single weighted average, not working for low-volume recycling centers. We have a world of recycling centers that are operating at 50,000 containers per month, and we have 1 to 3 million containers per month. Those folks operate in completely different cost worlds, and our one-size-fits-all processing payment, statutory processing payment, isn't working appropriately. I know there's been a lot of good ideas at the division over the course of the last 3 years. I think it's appropriate to communicate those ideas in a public way to policymakers. I don't want to get you in trouble with the governor or anything like that, but I just think that there's a lot of confusion among the public, among stakeholders about what the flaws are and what needs to be, how we got into this mess and what is needed to fix it. And it's really, again, you're not picking on anyone, but I think it's clear it's a statutory problem, and I invite you to communicate that. But again, thank your team for all the hard work in the last 2 weeks.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Ralph?
Thank you. Adam, thank you for your very thorough report and sort of multifaceted impact on the entire program. Ralph Simoni, representing the PRCC. Just a comment and a thought that may be helpful as we look into the future. First of all stakeholders to this program, I think it's fair to say, are concerned by this latest event. It's going to have a traumatic impact all the way from the consumer to the quality of the end material that goes into the secondary markets. And if there's a possible silver lining in this, it may be the fact that Replanet possesses some very important analytical data that may be helpful to the department in evaluating where we go from here. What does the next generation of recycling center look like? There's a public policy publication called Cal Matters. They claim that they have received data from the department that Replanet was the beneficiary of $25 million. Scott, you're shaking your head, to the extent that's true.
So I just want to, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just want to clarify. Are you sure they claim repeat again what you said, the data they received from the department? I just want to make clear which data you're referring to, as opposed to data they may have received directly from Replanet.
Well, as I read their article, they claim that the cumulative amount of handling fees and processing payments was $25 million. Whatever it is, the same analytics apply. Assuming that $25 million is correct and dividing by 284 sites, that's $86,000 per center. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. All I'm suggesting is, to the extent the department has access to that data, can obtain a waiver from Replanet for that data, or have access from the bankruptcy proceedings, I think there's a treasure trove of information that would be invaluable to looking towards this next generation of handling of convenient zones and what it looks like in the future. So my suggestion is merely try to gather and evaluate as much information as you can from this latest event. I mean, we all know the anecdotal components in the press release and otherwise about increase in minimum wage, increase in workers' comp, all of these things. But let's try to scratch that surface and get the real data so that we know where the public policy needs to head in the future.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ralph.
Leonard Liang, recyclingregulation.com. My question would be, Mr. Murray hit it on the head, would the department be willing to advise the legislature that it's time to remove the weighted average for calculating processing payments? That's one of the biggest problems. I would also, if I were you, take credit for the reduction in the recycling Just last week, I got an update. Montoya Recycling, in a very well-located place in Phoenix, is down to 20 cents per pound per cans. So your enforcement efforts have had an effect. That place was running $1.90 for years, so that's good. And I think that you need to reflect the reduction in recycling because of the reduction in fraud. Okay? As far as Replanet, my account on YouTube, CACRV, I've got a number of videos up there on why they should have died, and I've gotten a number of calls in the past week. How did I call it? It was easy. They were a high-cost operation. The Berkeley report talked about that, and we don't want to support these high-cost, inefficient operations, and that's what they were. And if they were getting $86,000, $90,000 a year in subsidies, it proves it.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank
In the back.
Luna Coleman with CalRecycle. I just want to let you know the Option A report has been published to the public site this morning.
Thank you.
Luna, is that the dynamic searchable? Awesome. Thank you so much. Our IT staff rock.
Good morning. I'm really happy to hear about that report being published in a searchable fashion. That's great. Jenna Abbott, Protect CRV. We're the trade association for small independent recyclers, and we also want to extend our thanks for the work that the department is doing. We know this hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy for the recyclers. It hasn't been easy for you. So we're grateful. You're right about the volume. I got some stats just now on my phone. Text came in. We're hearing that Sunnyvale volume is up 50%, San Jose is up 30%, San Mateo sites are up 35%, and San Francisco is up 25%. So those are big numbers. I've asked for which sites in particular those are, but I don't have an answer on that yet. So yeah, we're definitely seeing the increase. We're feeling the loss of a large recycler. So we also would really love to see CalRecycle advise the legislature on things that can be done. And we're looking forward to working with you on that. This is an important time for our industry. It's, an unfortunate event has handed us an opportunity. And it's sad that it happened this way. It's kind of like, when you go to a funeral, it's the only time you get to see your family. So this is the time for us to actually make these changes. And we just want you to know that we're here and ready to help.
Thanks, Jenna.
Thanks for your comments. Any other comments? Oh, Heidi, go ahead.
Good morning. Heidi Sanborn with the California Product Stewardship Council, and we advocate for producer responsibility. The California bottle bill never has been producer responsibility. All the producer responsibility bottle bills have passed after ours passed, and none of them have had a situation like this. As far as I know, anywhere in the world where producers have been put in charge of a bottle and can program, have we ever had something like this happen where the entire half the infrastructure just collapses? So in a producer-run program, they fund, design, and operate the system, and they have to meet performance standards set by the state. And they don't have one-size-fits-all calculations. So it's a lot more flexible to allow for these kinds of situations where scrap prices drop very quickly. Bottles and cans are packages, and we have 2 comprehensive bills in the legislature to deal with packages, so that's an option. I guess, we're not advocating for the one right way with the existing system, but we do feel that there needs to be a big fix once and for all for this program. I've been working in this field now for 30 years, and it seems that every year there's a fix. There's some little fix, but there's something fundamentally broken here, and we've got to fix it once and for all and move on. There's so much more to do and other products to deal with. And we really want to encourage green design and source reduction, and even getting back to reuse and refillables. So again, we encourage you and we'll support you in whatever way you decide to go, but we do think it's time for a reset. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Any other comments? Tina?